Welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. We often start with announcements. I just really have one tonight, and I'll just give you a little teaser now because we're going to talk about it more later. The show is sponsoring a Boomer Sooner contest, the idea being to come up with Indian language words to the Boomer Sooner fight song. The deadline's August 1st, but we'll talk about that later. Tonight, my guest is Michael Stewart, who's a student of the Choctaw language. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me here.
I'm glad you could come. Give us a little bit of background on yourself. You are Choctaw, right?
Yes, I am. I'm a half-blood. I grew up in Eagletown, Oklahoma, which is a small town 4 hours southeast of here. It's one of those towns where if your eyes are open, you already missed it. And I grew up in a really small community outside Eagletown called Punky Boat, which in Choctaw translates to Grape River. And there's a small little collection of a lot of Choctaw people that still live there today, still.
Sounds like an interesting place, or maybe it's not. I don't know.
It's really rural.
Very small. Right?
Very, very small, and it's. I enjoyed growing up there, and
good.
It was great.
Yeah. Now, you're not a native speaker of Choctaw, right?
No, I'm not. Myself, my brother, and my cousins, we were the first generation not to be taught Choctaw as our first language.
So your parents do speak it?
My late mother spoke it, and my aunts and my late grandfather, they were all fluent.
Yeah. So you grew up hearing some Choctaw language around you?
Yes, we spent a lot of time with our grandfather, and whenever my mother and aunts would come together, that's all they would speak to him, and most times children would be like, "Are you talking about us?" We'd hear our name mentioned and never know.
Yeah. So before we go on, I wanted to ask you, I often start by asking guests how to greet someone in their language. How would I greet you in Choctaw? You
would come up to me and basically go, "Halito."
Halito.
Then most of the time, the other one would be like, "Chima chukma," which translates to, "Are you doing good?" And I'd probably, more than likely, I'd answer, "Jishnato," which basically says, "Yes, I'm doing well. How about you?" And you'd probably respond back, say,
Yeah. This sounds a little bit familiar. I've told you before, earlier today, I was telling you I had studied Choctaw a long time ago, but I haven't kept up with it, and I never got as far into it as I would have liked to. In fact, this afternoon when I was trying to call you on the phone, I noticed you had Choctaw on your answering machine, and I recognized the halito, and then you said, "Jima chukma hon." But then there was another phrase you said later on your message that I didn't catch. What was that?
Oh, I ended my message by saying, "Chinopala chiki," which means I will speak to you again. And instead of saying I'll talk to you later, it's just a more casual Choctaw way of saying, since there's most tribes do not have a word for goodbye, and that's one way we
talk to you later or something. Okay. Now, so you grew up hearing some Choctaw but not understanding it.
Just
you
words.
were in a small community with a lot of Choctaw people around you, so you just knew some words. Now, here you show up at OU a couple of years ago, right?
Yes.
And what happened then?
Well, what really swung me coming here was the fact that they told me, said it's offered here as a foreign language, which when you tell it to the elders back home, they get a laugh out of it because it's in foreign.
Right.
But it was taught here, and I thought that what a unique opportunity for me to, get credit for something that I was sort of familiar with.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So you took all three levels of the Choctaw classes, right?
Yes, I did.
And tell us a little bit about what that was like for you.
Well, the first semester we were taught by an English. She was getting her master's in English, but she did the part of the English. We had a native speaker. His name was Buster Jefferson. So it was like introduction of words and just the basic sentence structure. Then in Choctaw 2, under Dr. Marcia Haig and once again Buster Jefferson, we went a little bit more in depth into the sentence structure and more vocabulary. Choctaw 3, we had a new instructor, Leroy Seeley, which he kind of brought a different aspect to it, more of a, I would say, laid back to it. We were more concerned about the conversation, and he invited us to do other activities that you'd be amazed. I mean, using crayons in class, in college, you would never suspect that.
Well, I always say you have to become a little bit childlike to really be a good language learner. I think it kind of relaxes you and it keeps things on a simple level.
Oh yes, it does.
So have you become somewhat fluent now, do you think?
Now I think I did. I think I am, but until I go back home and when I speak to the elders, they kind of sit there and they giggle at me a little bit, but then they're happy to hear that I'm making the effort and we can understand each other now.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. You brought something to show. This was from your third level of the Choctaw class, right?
Oh, yes.
Story. Can you tell us about that? In fact, they already took some close-up shots, which we'll try to work in as you tell the story. So maybe you can just kind of go through it slow. I think the illustrations are very charming too. You can sort of maybe read the Choctaw for us and tell us what it means afterwards.
As we see our first picture, we say Pomofiat Washkubitok, which translates to our dog had mange.
An interesting story topic.
Well,
true to life though, right? It does happen.
If you grew up in the country, you would understand that.
Right.
And as we go on, it's Ilapat Pomofi Ikbi Shotuk, which basically said this made our dog stink very bad. Then this is something our grandfather always had us do. Pomofiat Ofi motor oil Ayopi Imat Achitok, and it translates to saying our grandfather told us to dip the dog or give him a bath in motor oil. And as we see, then Chiki Washkobi Yat Alakofi took means soon the mange began to heal. Then finally we have Himona Pimofi Chata Yato Yokpa Hoke, means now our Choctaw dog is a happy dog.
And I see he's dressed up in full Choctaw regalia and he looks truly fine. I think that's great. So that was one of your assignments to come up with a story like that?
Yes, it was. It was very good because it allowed us to think in different terms than we're used to. Instead of trying to be so complicated, we was able to, say go to that childlike stage and just stories just start flowing.
Well, I think that's great. Now I want to ask you something a little more, well, actually before I get to that, let me ask you this. I'm sure you have lots of non-Choctaw friends at OU.
Yes.
That you run into. What happens when they ask you what you're taking or when you were taking the Choctaw classes? When you mentioned that you were taking Choctaw, did you get any particular reactions to that? Were people surprised or?
Some were. Some didn't even know it was offered, and some were very interested in learning it because I have one particular friend from Tennessee who, she knows nothing about the none of the tribal cultures, and she found out about this, and she just loved it, but she wasn't able to take it. And I had another friend from Texas. She was up here doing her master's, and she decided to take it because she didn't know anything about it, and she wound up really enjoying the class a great deal.
Oh, that's great. So the word's getting around.
Oh yes, it is. And
good. Now this was the part where I wanted to get a little bit more philosophical.
Okay.
I'm sure you grew up, as you said, being curious about the Choctaw language and knowing that it was, it was related to your background and part of your culture, and yet you didn't really have any fluency and didn't understand always what was being said. So then you come and now you learn enough so that I'm sure you must be able to pick up a lot more now and you can speak a little bit. How has that, where does that put you through? How has it changed you? Or
it's actually done a lot for me. I've been able to, let's see how I can really put it. Going back home, I'm able to share more with the elders, and they open up to you so much and tell you things. Normally they would, what could lose its translation in English. They can convey to you in the native language, which has different, I guess, realms of beauty to it, and it just helps you. Plus, as a person, it makes you feel good. As my late grandfather told me, he said, if you learn Choctaw, you can go far in life. And he told me this even on his deathbed. He was happy that I was taking these classes, and he once again told me that. And I was, it kind of.
It must have made you feel good.
Yes, deep down, I know that's a part of me. It always will be a part of me.
Now I don't. As I was telling you earlier, when I studied that little bit of Choctaw, it was at UCLA, so it wasn't anywhere near Choctaw territory. I don't really know that much about the community. I know there is a writing system. But do people who speak Choctaw normally also write it, or do they mainly just speak it?
It's spoken mainly. I've asked several pure speakers, and most of them cannot read it, or if they can, they've self-taught themselves by using the Choctaw Testament. Because church singings, like monthly singings, are very, very active down there in the southeast part of the state. It's like almost like a circuit down there. But majority of them. And I know, at least in the community I'm familiar with, they speak it but can hardly read it.
Well, that kind of brings me to another area of things I wanted to ask you about, which was what's going on with at the Choctaw tribe these days. I've kind of been hearing that things are getting rather active and that there's a lot going on at the tribal level with the Choctaw language. Can you tell us about that?
And I believe it was June of last year that they finally passed, the tribe funded them to establish a language program. Then a few months after that, I believe it was the Native American administration gave them more funding to go out into the communities of the Choctaw Nation boundaries to almost recruit pure speakers to get them to start community projects so they could, teach others who want to learn, and the little ones that want to pick it up, which is so good to it. And now they're establishing classes and making instructors so it'll be available at the community levels once again.
Great.
And I'm hoping myself that I'll be one day.
Oh, great. Well, that would be wonderful. I don't know if you're aware, but we're planning a show, an upcoming Wordpath show that's going to feature what we call a mini drama that's all been written, acted, and produced in the Choctaw language. Have you heard about this yet? Leroy Seeley's involved.
I've heard
with it,
bits and pieces. I just hear and they just kind of giggle about it, and
we actually went out a couple weeks ago and we taped with Leroy Seeley and members of his family. Actually, we have a little show that will be part of the Wordpath show in an upcoming episode. We still need to edit it and so forth, but I'm pretty excited about it because it's the dialogue is all entirely in Choctaw. We'll show it with subtitles so that non-Choctaw speakers can understand it, but all the actors are native speakers of Choctaw, and they came up with what they wanted to say, what their lines would be, and they said them, and I think it's pretty exciting.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like it would be.
And it all takes place in a Choctaw home out in McAllister. I know you were telling me that you were in the military for some time, right?
Yes.
So even though you grew up in a very small town, you have seen more of the world than that. Right?
Yes, after I graduated high school, I joined the United States Navy, and spent a couple of years on shore, but spent 4 of it at sea, and we did travel throughout the world, I guess I can say.
Wow, that must have been exciting.
It was.
Now, having gotten that perspective, coming from such a small town, a small community, and then seeing the world, as you say, must have kind of got you thinking some about your own Choctaw culture.
It does, because you can speak to people that have no idea of their background. They have nothing really to cling to, no culture, and finding out, I had this rich culture that I grew up with and didn't realize it. It just made me embrace it more. Than whenever I came home, I seen the others kind of, drifting. I was like, we have all of this, and I've tried to do what I can to inspire them to follow it up, and some have and some won't, but that's the way sometimes things go.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. What do you think about, again, I'm going to ask you to be a little bit philosophical here, just kind of reflect on life a little bit. I'm often concerned about, because of my work with the Intertribal Wordpath Society, trying to kind of publicize the cause of Indian language and culture. I'm concerned about how non-Indian Oklahomans view Indian culture or Indian languages. Do you have any thoughts on that, or has anyone given you any feedback on that? Do you have any concerns about
I know
that?
the most time we do run into this is at the fact they think all Indian tribes are the same.
Right.
We're what the little things on the side of the store are, and we try to explain our culture does one thing, and other tribes, they tend to follow other ways, and sometimes some people who's not familiar with it cannot, I don't say accept it, but process it. They say, well, I don't see how you don't do this, and you say you're
They
Indian.
don't want to believe it.
Yeah, and like you're saying, well, you're acting more, I guess, I don't know how to say it, in proper terms, but it's that part.
So I guess as a Choctaw person who knows something about your culture, that kind of puts you in the position of being an educator from time to time, right?
It does at times, and of course, as being like it's an educator, you're also a learner, because there's many times I've maybe assumed one thing, then I'll listen to someone who knows more and explain it to me and gives me a different perspective than what I have, and I've learned. Even right now, I'm still going that and learning that.
Right.
So.
I'm glad that you're spending a lot of time going to elders and continually learning.
It's the best. They're our best source we have, and as they all say, once they're gone, we'll lose that unless someone or some people take the time to try to get it down. And
now, if you do become a Choctaw language teacher sometime in the near future, we hope, have you thought about which? You've had several different teachers now. Have you thought much about what approach to teaching the language you would take?
Well, I like to combine them all, because majority of the people will be teaching will be primarily English speakers, and you have to teach them in a way they learned in the classroom, because if you try to just to do conversation, they might not be familiar with that way of teaching it, and it's unless you have the grasp of the grammar, it could be very lost a lot, and a lot of learning that could be meant to be done could be
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's good to combine a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
different angles on it because different people learn a little differently too.
Right,
And
you know.
there are individual differences, I think. I almost forgot you were going to show your Choctaw book there, weren't you? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, this is the Byington Dictionary. For many years, the tribe, we didn't have a, I guess to say, official written language. There's several dictionaries out that, has one spelling, one particular spelling. And finally, the tribe, when they established the language program, they also established the Byington Dictionary as the official written language of our tribe, which is helpful now whenever it comes to reading the books that are written in certain aspects like that to understand it more. And
Yeah. I think it's helpful to have a kind of a standard.
definitely.
Yeah. Because if people are spelling things 3 or 4 different ways, as they still are in several tribes, you can't always read each other's notes. You can't write each other's letters or whatever.
I run into that when I'm doing research with my family genealogy, is the fact that I've came up like 3 different spellings for my ancestors because it sounded phonetically and they wrote it that way, and it's it's kind of difficult at times when you're really looking and searching.
Yeah. Are there teaching materials available in Choctaw, like I don't know, primers for children to use in school or that sort of thing?
Yes, I know you can write to the tribal headquarters, and they have a program, the tribal language. You can order books there, and I believe they have
Right.
starter things, and plus
very
with the
good.
community program starting, they'll make resources available then.
Very good. What about any other types of materials, tapes or anything like that?
I have a couple of tapes that the tribe offers, and I believe I talked to them, and they're supposed to be making more. And plus, the university has a rich resource of materials too that many could get able to get.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe after you see our original mini drama in the Choctaw language, maybe you'll be inspired to round up some friends and make some videos in the Choctaw language. We hope by doing a couple of these it'll kind of inspire people to do more of them on their own. I think that's great. I think that the alphabet is standardized. There's more language teaching that's going to be happening. There are people like you that are getting back in touch with your roots and reconnecting with the elders. I think it looks very good. What do you think about the future of the Choctaw language in Oklahoma?
I'm hoping it makes a strong comeback. As more people get concerned and the tribe starts supporting it more, I believe we'll have a more of impact into it. Unfortunately, I personally feel that we'll never reach the potential that it once was many years ago. But I think we'll be more of a well-rounded to be able to combine both the Choctaw language and the English language in our everyday conversations.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Now, let me put you on hold for just a minute here because I have a tape to roll that I think might interest you as an OU student that has to do with the contest I talked about before, the Boomer Sooner contest. We have official rules and deadlines and so forth. Let's take a look at that. Hello, the Wordpath show is sponsoring a contest to come up with new words for Boomer Sooner in an Indian language. The English words are as follows. Pardon my singing. Boomer Sooner, Boomer Sooner, Boomer Sooner, Boomer Sooner. I'm a Sooner born and a Sooner bred, and when I die I'll be a Sooner dead. Raw Oklahoma, Raw Oklahoma, Raw Oklahoma, okay you. Verse 2 goes Oklahoma, 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 and continues the same as the first one. A judging panel will be put together from the Wordpath crew and Indian community leaders. The winning entrant will be invited to appear on Wordpath and perform their entry. Prize money of $50 so far has been offered for the best effort. The deadline will be August 1st, 1998. These then are the official Wordpath Boomer Sooner contest rules. Number 1, all entries must consist of the following: the name, address, and telephone number of the entrant, a tape of Boomer Sooner, 1 or 2 verses in an Indian language, and identification of what the language is. A written version in the Indian language with an English translation. A signed statement that the lyrics are the original creation of the entrant and that the Wordpath show has permission to play and display the entry on the air if it's chosen as the winner. Number 2, the lyrics must be in a Native American Indian language of any of the tribes headquartered in Oklahoma. The lyrics need not be a translation of the English words, but should suggest a fight song mentioning pride, the desire to win, support for the team, and things like that. Lyrics will be checked with a native speaker of the language for fluency and for accuracy of the translation. Lyrics will be judged by their singability, so keeping at least some repetition, as in the English original, is advised, for their positive spirit, and for authenticity of the language. Number 3, send entries to Wordpath, 1506 Barclay Street, Norman, Oklahoma, 73071. All entries must be postmarked by August 1st, 1998. 5, the tune to Boomer Sooner is in the public domain, not copyrighted or copyrightable, but the lyrics remain the property of the entrant. Number 6, materials will not be returned unless sufficient return postage is included with the entry. Number 7, a prize of $50 will be awarded by our panel of judges. This information may be updated if additional prize money is donated, in which case more than one prize may also be offered. Watch Wordpath for the latest prize information. The judges reserve the right not to award a prize if the number or quality of entries is low. The contest, this is number 8, the final rule, the contest is open to all Oklahoma residents. Now, if you missed anything that I just said, or if you'd like a printed version of the rules, you can pick them up soon around Norman, probably places like Tribes Gallery, Windmill, Levite of Apache, and similar places. Good luck and get writing. I think I was a little nearsighted that night. But anyway, so maybe you or some of your friends will come up with words for Boomer Sooner in Choctaw. I think it would be terrific.
We'll try.
We were talking while that announcement was playing about Choctaws in other places besides Oklahoma. Of course, there's a whole community in Mississippi, is it?
Yes, there's one that remained before when we marched. There's some that remained, and some came over here to Oklahoma, and they're the ones that stayed. And they struggled, but yet they prospered. And according to the last thing I checked, they're like 92% Choctaw literate. Before, and I believe English is their second language.
Wow.
And we do have several Mississippi Choctaw students here at the university.
So is there very much contact between the two communities these days? Between the Oklahoma Choctaws and the Mississippi?
I believe they're relatives. They tend to get communication. Yeah. My last instructor, Leroy Seeley, he has family out there, and whenever I speak to him, he's always mentioned how, going back and forth, that, talking to his relatives, and he having to think in both the Oklahoma dialect and the Mississippi dialect, and try not to get confused there.
And also you were mentioning you spent some time out in California, and there's a surprisingly large community of Choctaws out there. And how did that come to be? Do you know the history there?
Well, what I was told was, like, I guess maybe it was in the 50s that when they had the relocation, they were trying to, I guess, get the tribe people out of the areas. And I believe in California there was a lot of places they've either jobs were opening, and a lot of them moved out there and decided to stay, but yet they still have a lot of family over here. And I went out there recently to the Choctaw clan, California Choctaw clan meeting out there, and met several of them that's grew up the entire time there, and didn't have the, I guess, say, the advantage of knowing the culture firsthand, just hearing about it. And some, I was amazed that some still spoke the language, and I was able to sit down with a couple of the older ones and just kind of converse back and forth, and just they'd ask things, and I'd learn things from them.
My Choctaw class that I took years ago was at UCLA, and as a class we went to a church in the Los Angeles area. We were quite surprised to find out that there was a Choctaw, at least one Choctaw congregation there, and they sang hymns in Choctaw and so forth.
Yeah, I come to find out I found a relative I didn't even know I had, and he has a congregation out in Vallejo, California, and they try to concentrate on teaching the Choctaw language and speaking it there. So.
Well, I think that's great. So you were telling us before that you hope to become a language teacher yourself, perhaps working for the tribe?
Yes, I'm hoping once I get my degree that I can become very available to them, to work into the language department, because I was just the area from I know I like to concentrate, because down in McCurtain County, and there's a lot of resources there, which would hopefully allow the language to go. But yes, that's what I would like to, and try to avoid politics. That's the best way to stay culturally.
Keep cultural, but try not to get political.
Yeah,
it can be tricky. Another question just occurred to me that we hadn't discussed before, and that is most tribes have a major annual celebration. Is there an annual Choctaw celebration, and if so, when is that?
Our major one is always the Labor Day Festival we have down in Tushkahoma, which is like 5 miles north of Clayton. And generally we have like, it's like a 3-day festival beginning like on Friday, and it always ends on that Monday of Labor Day. And in the past, it's been like they've had a little carnival and booths and concerts. But this year, I talked to the assistant chief, and they're having the first all Indian rodeo out in Clayton, and they're hoping that this will bring in more people and add more to the event. And also the chief has mentioned that they're slowly going to try to integrate more of our tribal culture into the festival
That's what
as
I was
it
gonna
once
ask you
was.
about.
And I believe he mentioned when we was in California they're going to try to add authentic, almost tribal village, and every year they're going to try to add more and more.
Very interesting. So when you go, even as it is now, as the celebration is now, when you go there, do you hear very much Choctaw spoken?
I look for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's in certain circles, but you have to make yourself aware of who you are. And most of the time, I don't go by my name. I use my grandfather's name, and most people are familiar with who he was, and by that way, it opens the door opportunity for myself.
Well, when you're talking to the powers that be, maybe you can get them to institute some kind of specific language activity. I know, just a suggestion, I know the Comanche tribe has an annual fair where they have a storytelling contest, and brings out some of the elders and a lot of young people who want to come and hear their stories in Comanche. Then they retell them in English for those that don't understand, and I think it's a wonderful thing. Just a thought. Anyway, it sounds like there's a lot happening in Choctaw country, and that sounds like you're going to be involved in it. I hope so, and I wish you every luck in teaching the language and preserving the culture. Join us next time on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita.